Welcome back to the 700 Club for more of our top stories from CBN News. A Hamas terror headquarters right under the heart of Gaza City. Israeli forces discovered the strategic network of tunnels among civilian buildings, including a school for deaf children. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
The tunnel runs under what's called the elite quarter of Gaza City, including Palestine Square.
You can see behind me the community college. You can see there the Alpha Luna Society for Deaf Children. You can see government buildings. You can see civilian buildings. From outside, everything looks normal. Everything looks like a regular city.
The square is the center of the strategic tunnel network, housing Hamas leadership's strongholds. It connects to the underground infrastructure near the Rantisi Hospital and the Shifa Hospital uncovered earlier. The tunnel shafts are located in residences and offices of senior officials, allowing for covert descent, enabling Hamas operatives to escape and remain in hideouts for a long time.
There's an electricity box here. This opens. This was closed. This is actually a door, not the back of a box, which reaches a space that leads to the tunnel shaft below.
President Biden says the U.S. is still trying to restart negotiations for a ceasefire that includes a hostage release and humanitarian aid to Gaza.
We're pushing it. There's no expectation at this point, but we are pushing.
A top Hamas leader arrived in Egypt for talks, but the terror group says there will be no hostage negotiations without a ceasefire. Meanwhile, in the north, Israel struck Hezbollah infrastructure after the Iranian-backed group fired a rocket barrage that hit the city of Kiryat Shmona overnight, causing damage but no injuries. IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi told reservists that Israel will not return to the previous situation along the northern border.
This means to push further, to reinforce this, and to bring the residents back here, to Netua, and along the entire border line, to a different situation that is much more secure.
While another Iranian proxy, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, are threatening to target American warships after the U.S. announced an international force in the region to protect global shipping from Houthi attacks. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, since biblical times, Israel has had to go to war to fight off its enemies. That's led Jewish scholars and rabbis over the centuries to explore what Scripture and Jewish teaching have to say about war. Chris Mitchell has more from Jerusalem.
Now in its third month, Israel is fighting a war for its survival against Hamas. CBN News talked with Rabbi David Gottlieb about when Israel goes to war.
So let's start with the basics. The highest, most basic value in Judaism is life. And at the same time, we have a nuanced, or you could say sophisticated approach, and understand that sometimes, painfully, the greatest way to protect life is war. And war necessarily means the act of killing other people.
In the Bible, Ecclesiastic chapter 3 states, there is an appointed time for everything, including a time for peace and a time for war.
When there are Nazis or Hamas terrorists, it would be wonderful if they would all just surrender and stop killing good people of all faiths. But when you have ruthless enemies who want to kill good, innocent people, unfortunately, sometimes war is the moral answer. And Judaism certainly, in the broad strokes, absolutely endorses war when necessary to protect morality and life.
The Bible provides many examples of Israel going to war.
Really goes back to Abraham, who, by the way, we know was a man of peace with the open tent. And yet, when did he first go to war? To rescue a captive, his nephew Lot. So it's very reminiscent of what we're doing now. And of course, as you mentioned, King David, the same sublime soul who wrote the Psalms, was a warrior when he had to be.
So when does Israel go to war?
The values of morality, of respect for innocent life, of only killing when absolutely necessary, but when necessary, not hesitating to do so, those are firmly sourced both in the Bible and the rabbinic tradition. In the rabbinic tradition, there are only a very few circumscribed times when we would go to war, but the best example of that, which is the one we find ourselves in now, is a war of self-defense.
Israel defended itself after October 7th, when Hamas murdered 1,200 citizens, injured thousands more, kidnapped hundreds, and destroyed entire communities. Now a growing international movement accuses Israel's military of disproportionate use of force and genocide. Rabbi Gottlieb says the IDF fights by a code of conduct.
There is a principle that guides the IDF. It's called Torah Neshek, or the purity of arms, and it is one of the most restrictive codes of conduct of any army in the world, surpassing even the United States of America in terms of its rules of engagement. So certainly we take it very seriously. And as the father of two sons and a son-in-law who were called up on October 7th, I, on the one hand, am very proud that I know that they will be fighting only based on the rules of absolute morality. On the other hand, I am nervous because Israel bends over so backwards.
This tendency can often put IDF soldiers at risk while doing what they can to warn and protect civilians in Gaza.
I mean, is there any other army that weeks in advance of a mission is sending leaflets and making thousands and thousands of phone calls warning people? We totally lose our strategic advantage just so that we can hopefully warn innocent civilians. I don't know of any other government that does something like that. But Israel does, and we're very much proud of this as a moral force.
Rabbi Gottlieb sees October 7th as one of the most painful moments in modern Israeli history. It remains seared into the hearts and minds of the Jewish people and will not be forgotten. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
An informed look at God's sovereignty during wartime, remembering that victory comes from the Lord. Gordon?
Well, this October 7th is going to be seared in all of our memories, and we should never forget it. It is absolutely horrific. When you hear someone call for a ceasefire, that the IDF should stop its advance into Gaza, that should stop killing innocent civilians, have this question for you. When should Hamas stop firing rockets? One of the keys is Hamas is still firing rockets. Does Israel have a right to defend itself? Does Israel have a right to shut it down? And the more they go into Gaza, the more they find this entire war is underground. Not just a little bit underground, but 160 feet underground. And it is absolutely ludicrous to say Israel has to keep taking rocket attacks for a hardened enemy who has vowed that they will repeat October 7th again and again and again. The whole world needs to come together and say Hamas shouldn't exist anymore. This ideology that it's somehow virtuous to wipe out the Jewish people. No, never again. This should never happen. October 7th should have never happened. But now, on our watch, in our generation, we need to say it will never happen again.